You won't believe what viewers claim to have seen just now. Chantel took the microphone on Jackie's stage and, based on the persons there, implied that Evelyn and Ty's husband's late-night meetings had somehow found their way into the group chat, which was meant to be private. None of this is being verified by us. We're responding to what attendees and insiders say was hinted on broadcast and said backstage. The room became silent. Jackie looked at her cards. A seat filler gasped somewhere in the crowd, and Chantel's voice shook just enough to hurt. Oh no, as if the word itself had the power to go back in time. Fans are taken aback. Emotions were running high, and the family was split in two, with half pleading for forgiveness before a rumor ruined anyone's marriage, and the other half demanding receipts. It wasn't evidence, according to Chantel. She referred to it as context, stating that the purported locations and timestamps seemed too accurate to be disregarded. At the same time, silence fell on the floor like a spill that no one could clean up quickly enough. If you believe people near the stage, Evelyn's face hardly moved. Before the program ended, Ty's name began to gain popularity, and Jackie kept saying, "No one gets blindsided tonight." We're not claiming that this truly occurred, but she was attempting to quell a storm without identifying it. We're repeating what individuals claim to have seen. And the question that is now engulfing all timelines is straightforward and cruel. Is this the spark that ignites a quiet relationship, or just a miscommunication with sloppy optics? A silence. That didn't seem like serenity as described by some who claim to have been near enough to see the stage lights reflected in the guests' eyes. It was like to holding your breath. They claim that Chantel spoke quietly when she informed Jackie that she had information, not proof, about Evelyn and Ty's husband's late-night meetings, and that this information had reportedly leaked from a secret thread into the larger rumor. None of this is being verified by us. We're repeating what backstage crew and guests say was alluded to when the countdown clock flashed red. Everyone in the crowd leaned forward. As if tone alone could prevent a storm from developing, Ayari, floor producer muttered, "Stay gentle," into a headset as the chat wall swamped. Beneath the amber lighting, Jackie's set seemed cozy, the type of warmth that often dissolves friction in a living room. It did the exact reverse tonight. Condensation beads marched in straight lines like soldiers, giving the appearance of tension, even to the water glasses. Ty's hands were clasped so tightly that they blanched as she sat there. Several others believed that a little detail mattered more than just the words. Evelyn raised her chin and tilted her shoulders in the direction of the camera. Calm was like a sculpture chiseled onto her face. While others wrote, surprised fans repeatedly appeared on the live stream. The division seemed like a fault line, under each seat in the room when they were allowed to speak privately. "We are here to listen without harm," Jackie stated gently after clearing her throat. While this statement couldn't promise anything, it at least pointed the night away from the edge. Though she didn't read from it, Chantel raised her phone. According to her, the locations and timings in the purported thread were too orderly to be disregarded, and the map pins corresponded with evenings when everyone believed the day was over. You could hear the air conditioner kick up, according to a lighting text. It seemed like a pulse accelerating throughout the room. The crowd, strangely, did not applaud or jeer when Ty exhaled deeply and added, "If there are questions about my home, ask them without turning me into a headline." They grew so still that the only sound left was the buzz of the cameras. Evelyn's voice was next level. "I'm not here to provide food." "Speculation," she said. "I am here to protect my dignity." It wasn't a confession or a denial. It was a line, drawn with steady hands. We are not claiming the threat exists as described. We're reporting how the room reacted to the idea of it. A seat filler 2 rows back told a friend later that Chantel apologized for the timing, but insisted silence had been doing damage off camera. "I should have found a gentler door," she said, a phrase that trended within an hour because people love a tidy sentence to hold messy feelings. Jackie nodded, then turned toward the crowd and asked everyone to keep their questions human-sized. That single choice shifted the energy a notch from courtroom to living room with the blinds half closed. Behind the primary cameras, a producer slid a small wooden box onto the table. Inside were blank cards meant for a lighthearted game, a segment no one had the appetite to play now. Jackie touched the lid as if to say, "Later then." Using the pause to set terms, she said, "No screenshots on air, no names we don't already own." Chantel, Ty, and Evelyn all agreed. I acted clumsy. But the request was about care. It sounded like a ceasefire, even if it wasn't peace. The chat slowed from a torrent to a strong stream, which in this world counts as progress. What several crew members insist happened next was quieter than the rumor suggested, as Chantel explained that someone in the inner circle allegedly asked her to step in before the internet did it with knives. Jackie softened a millimeter, according to those who were near enough to view her face, just enough to bring subtlety into the space. Ties then came the part that everyone will remember differently, the mention of parking lot timestamps and hotel lobbies. Chantel emphasized that she couldn't verify those details, only that they appeared in the alleged thread. That's why I said context, she added, not proof. The difference matters to some people, but to others, it is a distinction, without comfort. Emotions ran high in the second and third rows. Evelyn's shoulders dropped a little, and her hands unclenched in her lap before settling again. A tiny loop of movement that looked like a person reclaiming her body under a microscope. Another said in a whisper, "This may be required." The show's fan base split, leaving the family split, and not just theirs. Jackie seized the topic by the edges and folded it inside, asking Ty what safety meant to her at the moment. "Privacy and a timeline I choose," he said. "Friend groups watching an apartment split." Even the crew divided quietly along their own thresholds for what qualifies as care. Evelyn said, "No performance of my pain," when she asked her what respect looked like. Chantel said, "Stepping back and handing over what I was shown to people who can verify or debunk without turning it into a circus," when she was asked what responsibility looked like. Those responses included nothing explosive. In a rewarding environment, such absence seemed radical. There was a silence that sounded like the inside of a seashell, filled with undertow and breath. After a quick question and "How do you tell the truth without tearing someone you love?" a teacher raised a hand from the crowd. She asked, especially when thousands are watching. Jackie didn't rush to answer. She looked at the three women and waited. Ty said, "You ask for permission first." "You accept a no without punishment," Evelyn replied. "You keep your own fear inside so you don't let it get to someone else," Chantel added. A brief twist came when a side monitor flashed a grainy still of a lobby with a timestamp, probably a misfire, from the control room. It blinked away so quickly that half the audience missed it. But those lines aren't fireworks, but they're the kind of sentences people write on sticky notes and tuck into mirrors. We are still not endorsing any claim. We're mapping the shapes of what people say they heard. "We do not project stories onto shadows," Jackie answered, raising a calm hand as the other half saw enough to gasp. It wasn't reprimanding or defensive. A hand was resting on a railing in a tilting room. A mumble followed the gasp, and then there was listening once more. A stage manager put a thin folder next to Jackie's cards a few minutes later. It included a standard procedure sheet, if stories are to be believed, how purported items get from rumor to evaluation without turning into actual content. Jackie spoke into her microphone as she pushed it closer. "Professionals, not applause. We'll check everything that has to be checked," she added. A few claps went up, the kind that acknowledges relief without victory. Ty gave Evelyn a glance. Evelyn turned to face Ty. No grins, no fake hug. Just the acknowledgement that they had decided to shield themselves from spectacle for this minute. The three sat on the same sofa with a cushion between them and mugs of lukewarm tea in their hands in the green room afterwards, according to two makeup artists who have a keen sense of emotional weather. While a producer set up a private room later in the week, there were no speeches or scripts, just a shared look at the same point on the carpet. That detail sounds invented for steady hands, but three separate people mentioned it, which either makes it true or makes it the kind of tender fiction crowds create when they want a softer ending than the one a night like this usually gives. Meanwhile, outside the studio, the sidewalk buzzed with competing certainties. A small plate of ginger cookies was left on the table with a note that read, "For steady hands, that detail sounds invented, but three separate people mentioned it." One side said that the late-night gatherings were just work sessions that were misinterpreted by weary eyes. The pattern, according to another, was too obvious to be a coincidence. The quiet was not to everyone's taste. A few blogs pushed the line that silence equals confession and restraint equals guilt, and counter-arguments quickly surfaced. Silence can also mean breath, and breath is what people take when they've decided not to bleed for applause. The family was split in the comment sections of those posts too, but now it was more about how to behave when you don't know. Then came a twist that no one saw coming. A local cafe owner posted security footage stills that showed 2 of the alleged meeting nights. In the first still, a group of 4 people sat by the window. No Ty, no husband, just 2 producers and 2 interns working over a shared laptop. In the second still, a late-night timestamp matched the alleged thread, but the faces were blurred by glare, making it impossible to identify them. Within an hour, the cafe owner removed the ad stating, "I don't want to be involved in this." But the stills had already been screenshotted, annotated, and absorbed into both camps' arguments. One side said, "See." Another responded, "See too. We cannot reveal who sat in those chairs at what times, but we can share what 2 different staffers said they saw when they passed the frosted glass. Slow nods, long pauses, a pen tapping once and then resting. That's how evidence acts when it tries to live on the internet." In the meantime, private work continued in rooms without cameras. A small conference space was reserved under a generic name, and it contained water, tissues, a discreet box of chocolates, and a calendar open on a tablet. An claimed voice message from an insider threatening to dump everything if a specific person didn't come clean was a fresh rumor that attempted to grab center stage as evening turned to night. It sounded dramatic, mostly due to the usage of the phrase "come clean," the internet's favorite cudgel. Not the loudest, but it hummed like a grounding tone. Almost instantly, a calmer chorus emerged. "Let them decide. Let professionals verify. Let friends be friends out of frame." On social media, people started sharing their own boundary scripts. "I can love a show and still not demand a confession," one person wrote. "I can be curious and still choose compassion," another person wrote. Someone stitched clips of Jackie, saying, "We don't humiliate people here across seasons," and added hold to it. It's easy to call that corny, but for one night, enough people did it that the pylon looked more like a pile under, sturdy enough for the people on stage to stand on while the weather passed. One last noteworthy moment occurred in the lot as cars lined up under buzzing lamps. Ty stopped by the passenger door, looked back toward the building, and lifted 2 fingers in a tiny wave to no one in particular. Evelyn crossed to her own, car, keys in her fist, chin level, a posture like a sentence that ends in a period instead of an exclamation. Chantel lingered by the curb, speaking quietly to a producer, then tucked her phone deeper into her pocket. Jackie stood by the stage door long enough to thank a custodian and a night guard by name. None of this answers a mystery. It describes a night when people used verbs like wait, ask, verify, and protect, instead of the internet's favorite verb XP. So where does that leave the alleged late-night meetings and the leaked pins? Still unproven, still disputed, still magnets for projection. It leaves the friendships under review, not by the crowd, but by the people inside them. It leaves a stage that refused to turn a rumor into a set piece. It leaves a host who keeps saying no to spectacle even when spectacle would pay in clicks. And it leaves us with the same responsibility viewers kept typing and then deleting before posting. Hold. Curiosity in one hand, care in the other, and don't drop either. Because if the night taught anything, according to those who swear they felt the room breathe, it's that gentleness is the only plot twist that doesn't need a receipt. Dusk laid a silver film over the lot, and people who say they were still on headset describe a steadier hum, like the building had chosen a slower heartbeat. The afternoon protocol had done its work. Fewer wandering eyes, more clear lanes. "Process first" was written as a printed reminder on the call board. None of this is confirmed to be resolved by us. We're following a room's attempt to defuse a rumor without acting as if it never happened. "Tonight we land quiet," a paw said, holding a stack of brand new cue cards. And for once, the phrase didn't sound like defeat. It sounded like a plan. Jackie walked the corridor with that small, deliberate pace she uses when she wants people to feel the ground under them. She checked on audio, nodded at lighting, and paused by wardrobe where Ty stood getting a last lint roll that didn't need doing. "Any needs?" "You'll have one, Jackie," Jackie said, keeping her voice inside the distance between them. "A door that locks," Ty replied, partly in jest, half in prayer. Someone believes they saw Evelyn say, Today, I just won't be consumed. As she adjusted a cuff and talked softly to a lady who looked like a counselor and had a clipboard. I can forgive later, she continued. And the promise seemed less like a phrase and more like a key sliding across a table. She said, I'll give this to legal and bow out, to Jackie in the wings, who turned away respectfully. No reading, no teasing, no timeline, Jackie said. Thank you. That sentence echoed through the crew like a lantern. Then came the moment that could have turned theatrical, but didn't. Chantel came up with a manila envelope, held like a library book instead of brandishing it. What, if anything, was inside is not something we are verifying. People who have learned to pay more attention to temperature than headlines are describing the handoff in a way that we are mirroring. A little group of people on stage drifted in with a murmur that sounded nearly defensive. The open rolling, gentle and straightforward, the first chair lecture remained on a community grant. Jackie then made a discreet gesture by easing her seat, a degree toward the center, and spoke into a silence that she had assisted to establish. Her words, "We know things are loud out there. We will also be explicit about one point here. On-air screenshots are not available. No coercion masquerading as interest." It was hardly a wild round of applause. The temperature was warm. People agreeing to be better than their instincts is a unique type of sound. Titan gives a speech. On her knees, she flattened both hands. Before diving, the diver studies. I'm Sal. Going with privacy so that we may subsequently decide on truth. Easy as a line of chalk, she remarked, the stance of Evelyn Den. I refuse to inflict pain, she continued. Before passing judgment, I shall want confirmation. Chantel took a deep breath and held it. She said that while I was awkward, I would not bring disgrace to anyone's life. The rumor was not fueled by any of those lines. However, nobody disregarded the injury. There was a little tremor as a backstage monitor stalled, but the fans' horror still flickered across the live feed, although in a gentler range, the type that goes with, I hope they're okay more than drop receipts. 3 still images from a lobby that could have been taken from an old B-roll bin. Jackie raised a hand, like a metronome, steady. The crowd genuinely giggled when she remarked, we don't read tea leaves in pixels, which was a little release. Valve. A stage manager placed a slim folder with a neatly printed label on the edge of the table. Like feet on stones in a stream, you could sense eyes falling on the phrases, review steps, consent, sequence, compassion. We are not claiming that any inquiry has validated or refuted any findings. We are seeing that structure provided a bridge, across which speculation continued to attempt to swim. They could have returned to spectacle as a result of the line and what came after. Jackie wasn't alone when a nurse in row 3 inquired, what does repair look like when you have to do it in public? Like a light, she allowed it to move. None of it trended like an explosion. Ty said, time we don't have to explain. Evelyn added, a boundary that doesn't punish. Chantel said, a pause long enough for professionals to tell us what's real. The lobby lights went down to that gentle wash that gives a stage the sense of a church after the wrap. It all sounded like scaffolding. Jackie requested 10 feet of air from the crew for the principal. She led Ty and Evelyn down a side hallway to a little room with a light that was softer than the overheads and a sofa that had withstood 4 seasons. A mediator bided his time. Open notepad, quiet stance. The door clicked, a crisp sound that was entirely related to choosing and had nothing to do with drama. What was stated in that room cannot be mapped. Only the sentences that floated later may be shared. Not on camera, no unexpected phone calls tomorrow at 10 sour. Each of us will have a veto. That sounds like evasion to certain ears, like the initial stones of a root to others. A fresh twist attempted to seize the microphone outside. An unnamed voice notes that would resolve everything, according to the story. If you have something legitimate, send it to legal, not a timeline, was the response from a calmer current within minutes. And for once, it gained traction. Without any malicious intent, a tiny group of enthusiasts started pinning information regarding GPS drift, digital fakery, and how timestamps may be manipulated. Though the pitch changed from accusation to literacy, possibly the only evolution that ever slows a pylon, emotions were still running hot. Later, one of the lot's details gained quiet appreciation. Cruz says no one presented the message that said, "For the part of you, that's just a person." It was placed on a sideboard with 3 paper cups of chamomile. Someone just put it down and continued walking. Even if such gestures are seldom capits, they allow us to record another day without turning people into cliffers. A friend of the program shared a line that collected little hearts when automobiles sat motionless beneath June moths. You don't have to demand a confession if you adore a cast. It made its way through enough comment sections to alter the mood of a few rooms, but it didn't overpower the louder takes. As is typically the case when care demands patience, the family was left split. Still, a startling number of individuals started typing. "I'll hold off. It's not a decision. It's a post." 2 stones fell into the river of rumors in the meanwhile. On one of the purported occasions, a nearby restaurant owner first said that their late-night log saw a lengthy table of interns and producers, their features obscured by darkness and reflection. Second, depending on the phone export settings, you trust? A parking garage receipt with a timestamp that both matched and didn't match the online pins appeared. Neither pebble proved anything, nor did they sink. However, they did do something by turning certain headlines into question marks. When Jackie returned to the stage door, the structure reverted to its original appearance. Peeled tape, piled gels, and a plant that looks too green under inexpensive lighting. At the barrier, a youngster sought guidance on buddies who quarrel in public. Jackie signed a playbill and stated, "Select the smallest act of genuine kindness and do it." Next day, repeat the process. Instead of a take, the child nodded as if someone had just given him a tool. With his eyes calm and his hood up, Ty came out next. "We're with you," a voice said, and she raised her hand without acting. Evelyn trailed after, chin up, shoulders squared. Someone whispered, "Protect your heart." Chantel mouthed, "I will." She was last, putting her phone further in her pocket, as if it were a pledge she would honor. The gap didn't seem to be a break, yet they didn't walk together. It seemed to be breathing room, and the darkness positioned them there, not cleared, not found guilty, not turned into a tidy arc to be scored and sold. Verbs like wait, verify, question, and protect are selected by a host and 3 ladies alone. No elite blogs or late-night gatherings are confirmed by us. We are recounting how a fanbase broken yes discovered a few phrases strong enough to rely on, and how a program chose not to convert a rumor into a set piece. Because shock is a reaction in a society that teaches us to want receipts before we want people to be all right, fans are horrified. As is typically the case when screens make private oxygen public, emotions were running high. By the end of the EEI's day, the line between the camps seemed less like a rip and more like a seam that may hold if no one yanks. But the family was still split. Inside again, the house lights switched out as the stage man twisted the wire into perfect loops and spoke to nobody. "Tomorrow at 10 Sao. The way you say a hope out loud so it can find its way back." There was a block of time on a calendar in Hydari Day, a conference room that no one else could see, and the exit sign continued to buzz. Perhaps the review will make things clearer. It may make things more difficult. Perhaps it will only provide a more authentic platform for those in the center. Then a packed timeline. The last note of the evening wasn't a cliffhanger, whatever happens. It served as a border. And that's more uncommon than any twist in this genre. Morning showed up at 10Y as promised. Like a silent wave, gray light collects on the conference room carpet. The quiet was characterized as intentional rather than tense by those who claim to have been stationed close to the entrance. The type that results from everyone agreeing not to waste a tenuous opportunity. The hallway complied with the little sign that stated occupied on the doorknob. What was said therein is not being verified by us. The door opened for fresh water for a moment, then snapped shut again, and were relaying the forms of phrases that floated out. With a legal paper on her lap and a pen that was still but not capped, Jackie took the seat next to the window. With her shoulders squared in a somewhat rehearsed manner and her hands pushed on her knees, Ty took the left corner of the sofa. With her eyes steady and her fingers lightly clasped, Evelyn took a seat on the right. Chantel picked the chair closest to the entrance, as if it would prevent any additional mayhem from entering. 3 ground rules were established by a mediator, who spoke softly and sat more comfortably. A staff member with excellent hearing said they sounded like this. Before asking a question, get permission, don't speak on someone else's behalf, and don't leave the room until everyone has named it. Carefully, the first actual words were spoken. Even Ty's voice remarked, "I'm scared of the parts one doesn't know." Without Flint, Evelyn said, "and the parts the internet thinks it knows. I fear that others who were not there would portray me in the worst possible light." Chantel didn't attempt to cast a spell with her apologies. She responded, "I wanted to prevent a wound from becoming worse. Additionally, I picked a door that scraped everyone as it passed. None of it was tied to bows by Jackie." "We can be," she responded, "which is why we are here. We don't have to prove it to the world." A gentle tap. The trolley arrived. Water was replenished. The door clicked. Instead of asking about admissions, the mediator inquired about results. "What does this week's safe look like?" they inquired. Evelyn remarked, "No more trial by clip." Ty replied, "No more blind corners." Then came the lone, acerbic discussion. Chantel stated, "No more me as narrator." Jackie added, "No more props that pretend to be truth. None of those lines confirm a rumor or bury it. They draft architecture. Whether the hall's witnesses are reliable. I have a question to ask. You won't like," Ty said, meeting Evelyn's eyes and then glancing at the mediator for permission. A nod. "Were there meetings that could be misread?" she asked, even if they were innocent. Silence long enough to count breath. Then Evelyn answered, with the precision of a person who refuses to be trapped by her own sentence. "There were conversations," she said. "They were not romances, they weren't treacherous, they had nothing to do with a camera." Ty swallowed. "Thank you," she said, and there was no triumphant note in it, only relief and the ache of wishing that none of this had required air. We are not authenticating that exchange. We're carrying the contours as they were described. We can say that the voices remained low, the pauses remained long, and no one got up from their chair like a gavel. The mediator kept going back to verbs: choose, verify, pause, repair. Outside, the hallway maintained its slow heartbeat, the kind you feel in buildings where people are trying not to drop. The internet attempted to tear apart the room's outer edges once more, but a new clip surfaced. It featured a dim lobby, 2 silhouettes, and a timestamp that half of the comments called definitive, while the other half called doctored. A tech account dissected the moment frame by frame, pointing out reflective glare and compression artifacts. That could turn any 2 people into any 2 other people if you wanted it badly enough. A cafe server wrote that lighting after midnight turns people into ghosts, a post that garnered a few hundred hearts before being devoured by fiercer takes, but it still added a pebble to the side of back inside. The discussion then shifted to how to return to the stage without feeding the rumors. Jackie suggested that we tape the charity segment we owe, and we could include a brief note about our process. Ty nodded, Evelyn nodded as well. The mediator emphasized a word we've heard more times this week than most seasons combined: consent. If there is a joint sentence, they said, find the one that neither of you will regret reading back in a year. Chantel raised her hand half an inch. Does anyone on the panel know me? She said, I'll sit this out. The group did not linger in the hall. Instead, they moved like people who had learned that walking slowly is not the same as stalling. Rather, it is choosing not to trip. Crews moved aside without creating a tunnel of stairs, and Apa placed 3 mugs of chamomile on a console table, before leaving before anyone could capture the gesture in a picture. The sound of the building changed slightly when the door opened again, as if the ductwork exhaled. Fans outside the barricade held their breath, and their phones and screens remained down and up for once again. That afternoon's taping carried the gentle weight of a room that knows it has been trusted with something. The cold open skipped the wink. Jackie didn't sell a tease when she faced the audience for warm-up. Instead, she set a tone. We're going to bring you a good hour, and we're going to do it without turning real lives into puzzles. The applause that followed sounded more like agreement than excitement, which in a week like this counts as a victory. Nevertheless, the night wanted one more test. Halfway through the hour, a side monitor malfunctioned once more, spitting up a still that suspiciously looked like one of the alleged pins. The control room quickly killed it. The audience made that collective inhale that makes a sound, and Jackie answered it with her palm up steadily. She said, Wrong file, then added, and wrong place for any of that. She turned to the guest with grace. It was so clean that it felt like a rehearsal of kindness. The corridor did not turn into a stage after rap. A security log recorded vendor escort exit 1742, a neat little line that would mean everything if you needed it to, and nothing if you didn't. And the man in the cap, if he existed at all, did not wander the halls again. Ty and Evelyn met eyes at a corner and nodded once, the kind of nod you use when words would be awkward. Chantel waited by a vending machine until traffic subsided, then slipped out with her phone still face down. Jackie thanked the boom op by name and signed a. The split loosened somewhat on the sidewalk as one fan remarked, "We'll wait," before returning to the conference room to provide the mediator a brief list of next actions. And someone other said, "Me too." In homes, cars, and break rooms, the argument took a different form. People asked less, "Did it happen?" and more, "How do you behave when you don't know?" Some writers wrote their own scripts. Elsewhere, predictably, a few loud accounts tried to reignite the fire with old clips and new captions, but a surprising number of people responded with links to digital literacy primers and notes about how GPS drift can make a pin look more dramatic than the night felt. And the replies under that small thread grew longer than the arguments that typically consume everything. I can be invested without being intrusive. I can be inquisitive without demanding blood. And I can accept that private repair is real, even when I can't see it. Those sentences don't trend as quickly as outrage, but they last longer in the body because they make it possible to enter a workplace that is built on lights and lenses. And remember, you are a person with a spine and a choice. By the time evening thinned into night again, the building looked normal, as only places do after a scare. Scuffed floors, folded gels, a plant that still refuses to die under fluorescent hum. A stagehand looped cables into circles neat enough to reassure anyone who needs order to sleep. A custodial cart rattled past a small metronome for endings, and the conference room light clicked off. The sign on the door came down, and a calendar. Block with the same words as yesterday, tomorrow at 10 a.m. remained on a tablet. We are not announcing a verdict, and we are not dressing a rumor in certainty, but we are telling you how the air felt in a set that chose more periods and fewer exclamation points, how 4 people learned the difference between pausing and hiding, and how the host used a show to practice an ethic instead of mining a vein. Fans will always find a foothold because shock is quick, and the high emotions will never stop being true because stakes make hearts loud. The family was left divided and will continue to reverberating because families inside and outside screens cannot agree on what Caro's curiosity. However, tonight a different sentence joined them. They chose process, and in a week that attempted to force them to choose spectacle, that sentence might be the only one that allows any of them to sleep. And that's where the night leaves you, standing between whispers and patience, watching a room choose process over spectacle, while timelines still beg for receipts. From Chantel's careful context on Jackie's stage to the Ty and Evelyn's request for privacy, every beat pointed to one idea. Let professionals verify and let friends repair off camera. Fans are shocked. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided between people who want instant answers and people who want gentleness to win for once. We're not confirming any claims here. We're responding to what attendees claim to have seen, what insiders hint at, and what those grainy clips seem to suggest when screens turn shadows into certainty. So tell me, if you were in their circle, what would feel fair at this point? Should a joint sentence drop that simply states, "We're working through this and nothing more"? Or would you wait for a full report before anyone speaks at all? If your kitchen table were in the crosshairs, how would you strike a balance between curiosity and caution? Do you believe that the late-night pins are harmless overlaps, sloppy optics, or modifications that gain traction online? Please share your thoughts below. What boundaries should be non-negotiable? What accountability looks like without humiliation? And what closure you think would actually help? Share this with a friend who watches the show and ask them how they'd handle truth when thousands are watching. Be kind in your replies. If you value commentary that keeps compassion at the center, tap like so this reaches others who want nuance over noise. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to catch verified updates, quiet clarifications, and any joint message the group chooses to share on their terms. What is known, what is conjecture, and what should remain confidential until the individuals involved speak otherwise.